The world is more mysterious, more meaningful than perhaps we're normally led to think. So we start with that vision. And many people have at least a glimpse of that vision. But for most people, I'm afraid those glimpses are drowned out they just fade away. They're drowned out by everyday life and habits, and they just fade away. So they have little or no effect on the person, on their life, except perhaps just for a bit of regret, a sense of regret, a sense of disappointment with life because we're not feeling we're living as we should. So yeah, for many people, the path of vision, if you like, stops there and there's no transformation, and that really doesn't cause much. And this is where the path of transformation comes in. These glimpses are meant to change us. They are a message from somewhere that we should be living a more meaningful life. They're meant to begin to transform us and the way we live so that we start to manifest more and more our spiritual potential. So those glimpses, the path of vision, they're meant to be the start of the path of transformation. And the path of transformation covers all the other 7 aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path. And it covers really all aspects of our being and our life. So if we allow our glimpses of reality, our initial glimpses of reality, to feed through into the path of transformation, so that we begin to change and live a more meaningful life, then this feeds back into our vision, and our vision becomes deeper and clearer. So the path of vision and the path of transformation form a sort of circle: more vision, more transformation, more transformation, more vision. But for that process to begin, our vision has to feed through into our emotions, because it's our emotions that really move us. As we laughingly point out in the introductory classes, emotion has got motion in it. They what move us. It's our emotions that really guide how we live and act. So emotion is the second limb of the Noble Eightfold Path. Because it's the link between the path of transformation, between the path of vision and the path of transformation. It leads vision into the path of transformation, so into the other 7 legs. So if we want to get anywhere in the spiritual life, we need to get our emotions on board. We need to refine our emotions, make them more like the emotions of an awakened being, more skillful. And this involves cultivating metta, of course, and the other emotions we've been talking about over the past few weeks: gratitude, a love of what is beautiful, a desire to move towards beauty, admiration, even reverence. And these are all emotions that are strongly there. We can see them strongly in the historical Buddha, because they are emotions that are part and parcel of enlightenment. They are experiencing those emotions more is part of becoming more enlightened, more awakened. So we cultivate those emotions, and that, of course, is a huge part of the second leg of the path. We cultivate those emotions, allow them to grow and become more our motivation in life, become more the things that propel us to live and act in a certain way. But sometimes, somehow, all those sort of seemingly common sense things that we do to bring our emotions and hence our motivations in line with our vision, they don't seem to be enough. We might really want to grow and develop. We might really want to become bigger and freer beings, or we might think we do, but somehow maybe we can't seem to shift that troublesome pattern or that habit. We can't seem to leave that old pattern behind, although we think we want to. Or else we make a resolution to do something that we know is going to be good for us, lead to our happiness. like getting up early every morning and meditating, or meditating twice a day if we do that already, or going to bed earlier, or restricting our phone use, or and we really mean to carry that out. We really mean to carry that out. There's no question about it. We know it's a good idea. I want to do this. I'm going to do this. And maybe we do carry it out for a while, and then we don't. Somehow we seem to forget it and go back to normal. Could come up with loads of examples. So maybe we decide we need to work fewer hours so that we can devote more time to Dharma and Sangha. But then our boss calls us into the office and praises us, tells us what a wonderful job we're doing, and offers us a promotion. That will mean more work and more responsibility. But it's so exciting and so flattering, we take it, despite all our best intentions. And we decide the Dharma and the Sangha are the most important things in our life, but then we accept a job somewhere rather exciting, but where there's no Sangha. Or we get into a romantic relationship with someone who thinks Buddhism is rubbish. And then we move away. Or it becomes crystal clear to us that joining the Triratna order, having that effect on the world that allows us to do, that's what we are meant to do with our lives. And we throw ourselves into the ordination process for years. But then when the ordination team asks to meet us, invite us to come to an important retreat, and where they will, before they finally invite us to join, we decide to take a trip to New Zealand instead. I don't know if any of those examples ring any bells with you. They do for me. I've either experienced them myself, or people that I've known well have done those things or experienced those things. So what is going on? What is going on here? Well, to resort to psychological jargon, this sort of thing happens because a lot of our motivations and drives are unconscious. We really don't know they're there. That's what unconscious means. I mean, it's not like, it means we haven't got a clue. We haven't got a clue that they're even there. So, okay, this is an analogy that we really often use about this. And okay, it's getting a bit hackneyed with us, but it's such a good analogy, I'm going to use it again, is that of the horse and the rider. So we are like a horse and a rider. And the rider is our sort of conscious, normal mind, who we think we are. But the horse is our deep motivations, our deep drives. And we may think we're going over there, enlightenment, here I come, or whatever. But it's obvious to everybody else that the horse is going over there. And I usually joke at this point in classes that what the horse is usually going towards is a full nose bag, a warm stable, and horses of the opposite sex. Well, not necessarily the opposite sex, horses it finds attractive. Or sometimes the horse's motivations are even less sensible than that. So it goes rushing off, looking for a fight with a horse that reminds it of its father. Or it goes roughing, or it goes gallops away from a scarecrow that reminds it of someone who was once cruel to it. So it does all sorts of bonkers things. And the horse is really in charge. So the rider, that's you or me, who we think we are, we're left wondering, how did that happen? How did I get here? So that's one useful analogy, the horse and the rider. I think it is quite a useful analogy. Another that a lot of people find quite useful is the idea that we have several sub-personalities that all want different things. And most of the time, there's a sort of higher personality in charge. That's what you think of as you and I think of as me, that wants to follow the spiritual path. But this me is not always in charge. This me, who I think I am and who you think you are, might make the decision to get up early and meditate every day, And it might do that on Tuesday and really mean it, but come Saturday, it's not me that wakes up. On Saturday, it's lazy Larry that wakes up in the morning. And he has no desire to meditate whatsoever. He really wants to stay in bed. And he thinks that's the best idea. And we may have quite a few of those subpersonalities knocking around, hiding in the shadows of unconsciousness, just waiting to spring out and ambush us and take charge and undermine us when the opportunity comes up. So there may be obvious ones like, who have we got here? I'm into alliteration. Greedy Graham. There may be Greedy Graham, Lustful Lawrence, Angry Andrew, Anxious Andy, and Timid Thomasina. There may be more complex ones like Rebellious Roger, who is still trying to get back at his father, so he hates and reacts to any hint of authority anywhere. Or there may be Good Girl Gillian, who is still trying to gain the approval of her parents, so she's always trying to do what she's supposed to do and what will get her approval from the big people. Now, you may recognize some of these. You may have some different ones, you probably will, that sometimes pop up and mess up your good intentions. But whichever analogy you prefer, the horse and rider or the subpersonalities, the result is the sort of thing that I've been talking about. Resolutions that we really mean to keep, and then we don't. Or times like when we resolve not to get angry at that meeting. We know it's a bad idea. We know that so-and-so is irritating, but I'm not going to get annoyed. And then we do. Or when we go to visit, I don't know, our mum or our dad, and I'm not going to get irritated this time with them. And then we end up sulking. Or much more seriously, when we do things or make decisions that go against our conscious values and undermine what we thought was really important to us. And when this sort of thing happens, it's really easy to get discouraged. We might start to think we're sort of uniquely weak and lacking in willpower, that of course, we should be the supreme commander of our boat, the captain of our soul. So there must be something wrong with me. Well, actually, we're in really good company if we recognize that in ourselves. So, for example, here is a quote from the Confessions of St. Augustine, one of the great figures of the early Christian church. And this is what he has to say. My inner self was a house divided against itself. The mind orders itself to make an act of will, and it would not give this order unless it willed to do so, yet it does not carry out its own command. Why does this happen? The mind does not wholly rise to the heights where it is lifted by the truth, because it is weighed down by habit. Or how about St. Paul in his epistle to the Romans? I do not understand my own actions. I will what is right, but I cannot do it. The good that I would do, that I do not. But the evil that I would not do, that is what I do. And just in case you think this sort of thing is limited to Christians, how about this quote from Shantideva, the highly respected author of The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, which the Dalai Lama says is his main inspiration. He says, but although I have somehow found this unimaginably lucky opportunity to live a meaningful life, I am somehow led back towards those same old lower states of being. I seem to have no will about this, as though I were under a spell. What is going on here? What is it that lives inside me? So, some great spiritual figures from different traditions have had to cope with the same thing. And as I say, if you recognize what I'm talking about, then you're in good company. I have to say, if you don't recognize what I'm talking about, it's one of several possibilities. One is you're incredibly advanced and well done. And another is that you've never really tried to change yourself. And a third one, I suppose, is you're just really deluded. But as I say, if you recognize it in yourself, beating ourselves up is not going to help. It will only make things worse. But there are things we can do about it. And one of those is just to get to know ourselves better, to become more aware of the sub-personalities lurking in the shadows, or to learn more about our horse and what it wants. And of course, one great way to do this is to practice meditation. If you sit down and try and do the mindfulness of breathing, you will discover a lot about your mind. Practicing meditation and just letting all that surface chatter die down, we do learn things about ourselves. Things percolate up from the subconscious, the unconscious, both really inspiring and wonderful things, but also some of the not so great things. But we learn about ourselves. We learn about ourselves. Another is we become mindful. Some of what was unconscious becomes conscious. And another thing we can do is to try to practice the precepts as fully as possible. And then notice where there is resistance, where that stirs up resistance. Because that's, the easy bits, of course, are easy, but some bits are very hard. And that's when part of us really doesn't want to go along with it. So if we get to know ourselves and we make what was unconscious more conscious, then we can at least start to dialogue with the different drives inside us. We can make coalitions and compromises which get us some of what we want, which means that we're not so undermined and sabotaged by, as it were, parts of ourselves that really don't want the same thing that we do. And that can help. That can be a big help. That can be a big help, but it doesn't fully solve the problem. So we might make agreements with some of our sub-personalities not to undermine, and we all get a bit of what we want. But we still, it's as though we've formed a coalition government. And coalition governments might be a great way of running a country and getting lots of different voices heard, but they're not a great way of living a wholehearted life. We will still have all the problems that afflict a coalition government. Nobody gets what they really want. So we're not going to be able to live a really wholehearted Dharma life. And there will always be inner conflict. There'll always be bickering. There'll always be inner conflict and a sense of that inner conflict. And a coalition can break down at any time and leave chaos, nothing in its wake. So to really get the different parts of ourselves working together, to really get the horse willingly wanting to go where we want to go, we have to do something else. We have to go a bit further. And one way that we can do that, I think, is illustrated by a mythic story. The mythic story of how a figure called Padmasambhava first established successfully Buddhism in Tibet. So Padmasambhava, most of you will have come across Padmasambhava and be very familiar with him. But if you haven't, he may have existed as a historical figure, but he's also a figure who represents an archetype, the archetype of the magician, among others. The person who can get mischievous and rebellious spirits to serve them, a bit like Prospero in The Tempest, get mischievous and rebellious spirits working for him rather than undermining his efforts. So the story of how Padmasambhava first successfully established Buddhism in Tibet runs like this. So the king of Tibet wished to introduce and establish Buddhism in Tibet. Now, Buddhism, of course, was associated with higher culture. Tibet was a pretty rough, primitive place. Buddhism was associated with the higher cultures of China and India. So this was about raising the level of culture in Tibet. And he asked a a very saintly and scholarly figure, Shantarakshita, to do this for him, to help him to organize people, to build a monastery, to build up the first monastery, Sanya. And as I say, Shantarakshita was seemed the perfect person to do it, well-known, well-respected, very scholarly, and very saintly indeed. So Shantarakshita organizes the people, they gather the stones, and they start to build a monastery. But nothing ever seems to sort of happen. No progress happens because the people build the walls by night, and all the stones get put back. The people build the walls by day, and every night the stones get put back. And apparently what's happening is what are called demons or figures from the depths, nagas, are coming out of their hiding places and tearing down what the people have built and putting them back where they started. They just really don't want this to happen. So Shantarakshita, after a while, gives up. He realizes he can't do this. And he goes to the king of Tibet and says, well, sorry, king, I cannot do this, but I know who can. And that someone is Padmasambhava, who's a very, very different figure. We could have a picture of Padmasambhava. Ta-da! Okay, that'll do for the time being. You can have me now. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, he's a very different figure. And the word that's often used is tames the demons of Tibet. He gets the demons on his side. He does this in various ways. He does this in various ways. The demons are forces opposed to the Dharma. He does this in various ways. But basically, he gets them on his side. He gets them on his side. Okay, this is a story which describes how Buddhism was introduced to Tibet. But it could be seen as a metaphor of what happens in us, what happens in a person. So we could see the king as, if you like, our conscious mind, our normal mind, reasonable, etc., wants to make things better, and Shantarakshita is his agent. But that conscious mind, that normal worldly mind, cannot control these so-called demons, and they completely undo any effort that is made to create a better person, to create the monastery, or to create a better person. They undermine those efforts. They undermine them just as we do when we go back on a good resolution, or when we make some decision that just takes us completely away from the Dharma or undermines us in all sorts of ways. And in the story, they're called demons, or we normally translate what they are as demons, but that's a bit strong. We could say they're personalities. They're sub-personalities opposed to change, opposed to the Dharma, who in the night, in the darkness of unconsciousness, if you like, that's where they lurk, and they undo everything that we consciously seek to do in the daytime. And Padmasambhava tames them. He gets them on his side. Okay, how does he do that? How does he do that? And what can we learn from that? Well, one thing he does is he learns their secret names. And this gives him power over them. So magicians control, this is traditional stuff, they control the spirits that work for them by knowing their secret names. Once you know something's secret name, you've got power over it. And really, I think that's a metaphor for what I was talking about earlier, that when we really see and can almost label some obstructive tendency in ourselves, we have more power over it. That's one of the things he does. And one of the things, so I think that symbolizes bringing these things into consciousness. And Padmasambhava is often shown pinning down a demon with what's called a demon dagon, and sort of looking at it rather fiercely. And it's going, oh, okay, whatever you say, boss. So that's a bit fierce. Okay, Padmasambhava doesn't negotiate with the demons. He pins them down and brings them into awareness. But he also, I mean, I think there's a gentler aspect to it too. He doesn't do that with all of them. He commands their respect is what he does. He commands their respect. Padmasambhava, can we see the image again? Sorry, it's a bit fuzzy, but you can see here, you don't want to mess with him. He's a royal figure. There's a sort of energy and a royalty and a regalness and a nobility about him. He represents something higher, and he is a servant of something higher. That'll do, thank you. So there's a passage in the story where Padmasambhava refuses to bow to the king. The king demands that he bows to him because that's what everybody's supposed to do. And Padmasambhava refuses. And in fact, so impresses the king that the king bows to him. Padmasambhava is high. The king, if you like, represents the worldly mind, well-intentioned, etc., but still the worldly mind. Padmasambhava represents something higher. The king is you or I, and our worldly personalities, and Padma represents something higher and someone who serves something higher than that again. So our various sub-personalities will serve, they will follow someone or something they respect. Someone or somebody who is above their level, who commands respect by what they represent and what they serve. They will help in a higher cause. They will not serve our ordinary worldly self and its little concerns. As we are now, we cannot command their respect. Maybe the horse analogy works even better, because to get to change our metaphor, when Padmasambhava, this great being, when he whispers in the ear of the horse, I haven't seen the horse whisper it, but there you go. When he whispers in the ear of the horse, that horse recognizes him as a higher being, someone worthy of service. It responds with love and respect and loyalty. It wants to serve him. The horse wants to serve him because of who he is and what he serves. So to get our sub-personalities on our side, to gain the loyalty of our horse, we need to find some equivalent of Padmasambhava in our world. And one way to do that, perhaps, is to find some equivalent of Padmasambhava in ourselves. So the unconscious mind that I've been talking about it fully, these lurking figures waiting to spring out on us, these sort of lower drives, etc. But this unconscious mind, the depths, they're not just filled with arguing sub-personalities, there are wonders and there are treasures there. And perhaps an analogy for this is that it is as though deep down in our being, there is this magnificent medieval banqueting hall. And there's this great table, this wonderful hall, this great table. And at the table are seated all these awe-inspiring figures. There are magicians, there are empresses, there are bards, there are warriors, there are queens. And they're all fast asleep and covered in cobwebs. And every now and then, one of them sort of looks up and goes, "What are they doing now? Oh, boring," and goes back to sleep. These figures in our cellar they're not going to wake. They're asleep, they're fast asleep as long as we live a life concerned with normal, small things, if you like. But these figures in our cellar can command the respect of our various subpersonalities. They can command the love and loyalty of our horse if we can wake them up. But to wake them up, we need to commit to a meaningful life. I could almost say we need to commit to a mythic life. We need to be living out a deep and meaningful story. And of course, living the spiritual life in order to save the world, in order to join in with the bodhisattva activity of the thousand-armed Avalokiteshvara, that is a very deep story indeed. And if we commit as wholeheartedly as we can to that spiritual quest, to serving something higher than our own wants and anxieties for the welfare of the world, we will discover powers and resources in ourselves that we did not know we had. Okay, at first we will still have all the flaws and weaknesses that we drag along with us, but we will awaken those figures in our cellar, and gradually our demons will turn into Dharma protectors. Thank you.